They scoffed at her worth, until a quiet cowboy laid down silver and ended their laughter. Clara had always been a quiet, hard-working woman. She was not born into wealth or privilege, but she carried herself with a sense of determination that few in her small town could match. From a young age, she understood the value of effort and persistence. While other children played in the dusty streets or spent hours daydreaming, Clara spent her afternoons helping her mother tend a small garden behind their modest home. She learned to plant, to water, to nurture life from the soil, and she learned something even more important: how to work patiently for something that might not give immediate reward. Her days were long and often tiring. Clara would wake up before sunrise to sweep the front steps of their home, prepare simple breakfasts, and ensure that everything was ready for the day ahead. She carried herself with quiet dignity, never complaining even when tasks seemed endless or the world felt unfair. She loved the simplicity of life, but she also dreamed of something more, a life where people saw her for who she truly was, not just the young woman who worked tirelessly but seemed invisible. Yet in the town where she lived, visibility often came only from loud voices and bold gestures, and Clara had neither. Instead, she was constantly met with skepticism and judgment. The townspeople, who prided themselves on knowing everyone's business, whispered about her behind her back. They said she was too quiet, too timid, that she would never amount to anything significant. Their laughter would follow her through the streets, light at first but sharp with a sting that lingered long after she had passed. Sometimes it came from the market, where she sold herbs, vegetables, and homemade preserves. She would arrange her small stall carefully, placing each jar neatly, hoping someone would notice the quality of her work rather than dismiss it because of her humble appearance. Despite her efforts, ridicule was a constant companion. A group of women, known in the town for their sharp tongues, would often linger near her stall. "Why bother, Clara?" they would say, loud enough for others to hear. "No one will ever pay what it's worth for your little jars." Their words were meant to wound, but Clara learned to keep her head down and respond only with a polite nod or a quiet smile. Inside, her heart would ache, but she refused to let their negativity control her. She reminded herself that hard work often required patience, and that true recognition could not be rushed. Her family supported her as best they could. Her mother, though frail and tired from years of labor, often reminded her, "Clara, don't let them see your pain. Let your actions speak louder than their words." Her father, who had passed when she was just a child, had always told her that worth was not measured by the approval of others, but by the strength of one's character. These words became her guiding light, helping her endure the constant scoffing and skepticism. Every day, Clara faced little battles. At the town meeting, she would raise thoughtful ideas about community projects, suggesting ways to make the town more organized or more beautiful. Yet her suggestions were often met with smirks or quick dismissals. Men and women alike would interrupt her or redirect attention to someone more outspoken. She learned to speak carefully, to choose her words wisely, and to stand firm without showing frustration. Each small victory, every time someone nodded or took her suggestions seriously, felt like a triumph in a world that often refused to notice her. At the market, where she spent much of her time, Clara observed the behavior of those around her carefully. She noticed patterns, the way some people were respected simply because they were loud, how wealth often opened doors while hard work without recognition left others overlooked. These observations did not discourage her. Rather, they strengthened her resolve. She realized that patience and resilience could sometimes be more powerful than immediate acknowledgement. Clara's dream was not of fame or wealth, but of respect earned honestly and quietly, without compromising her values. Despite her quiet life, Clara also carried a spark of hope that refused to die. She dreamed of traveling to other towns, seeing new places, and meeting people who judged her by her abilities rather than appearances. She imagined owning a small shop or a garden that flourished under her care, a place where she could feel proud of her accomplishments. Every evening, as she returned home after a long day of work, she would sit by the window and imagine what the future could hold. The stars above her home seemed to whisper encouragement, reminding her that every effort mattered, even if unseen. Yet, Clara's quiet strength was tested daily. The townspeople did not merely ignore her. They mocked her openly at times, questioning her intelligence and her choices. It was not cruel in an outright way, but it was persistent, a constant drip of doubt from those who believed themselves superior. She would hear comments like, "Why waste your time on that? You'll never succeed," or "No one cares what a girl like you thinks." Even neighbors whom she had trusted occasionally joined in the laughter, forgetting that kindness was a choice. Through it all, Clara developed a remarkable inner resilience. She learned to find joy in small victories, like a neighbor finally acknowledging the quality of her preserves, or a child asking for help with planting flowers in the town square. These moments reminded her that worth was not always measured by the loud voices of mockery, but by the quiet impact one could have on others. She began to notice that her patience and attention to detail often made a lasting impression on those who truly paid attention, even if they were few. Clara's days were filled with routine, yet they were never boring to her. Every task was an opportunity to improve, every challenge a chance to grow stronger. She would wake before dawn, tend to her garden, care for animals, prepare her small stall, and engage with customers, all while enduring the whispers and sneers of those who underestimated her. And yet each night, as she lay on her simple bed, she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. She was living life on her own terms, learning, growing, and preparing for the day when her worth would be undeniable. And deep inside, Clara carried a hope that one day, the scoffing voices would be silenced, not by anger or confrontation, but by her quiet perseverance and the undeniable evidence of her abilities. She dreamed of a day when people would look at her and see not a timid, unnoticed woman but someone who had worked tirelessly, who had faced ridicule without complaint, and who had emerged stronger and wiser. That dream kept her moving forward, step by step, in a world that often refused to see her. Even in moments of loneliness or discouragement, Clara refused to give up. She found solace in simple pleasures: a warm cup of tea after a long day, the laughter of children playing near the market, the soft rustle of wind through the garden. These moments reminded her that life had beauty beyond judgment, and that her own journey was valuable, regardless of how others perceived it. She carried herself with quiet dignity, and in that dignity she found power. It was this combination of patience, perseverance, and quiet hope that made Clara unique. While others rushed, shouted, or sought instant recognition, she understood that true worth often required time, care, and resilience. The town might scoff, laugh, or underestimate her, but Clara knew that the world could not deny effort, heart, and skill forever. Somewhere beyond the judgment and ridicule, an opportunity awaited, a moment when her quiet strength would finally be seen and respected by all. The market had always been a place of mixed emotions for Clara. It was where she displayed her hard work, yet it was also where the town's whispers and laughter seemed loudest. On this particular day, the sun rose golden over the dusty streets, casting a warm glow on the rows of stalls. Clara set up hers carefully, placing jars of preserves in neat rows, stacking bundles of herbs, and arranging freshly picked vegetables with meticulous care. Everything looked perfect. She had spent hours preparing for this day, hoping that her small efforts would finally catch someone's attention, perhaps even gain her a little recognition. But the town's marketplace was a theater for judgment as much as trade. People bustled about, carrying baskets and chatting, yet their eyes often flicked toward her with a mixture of curiosity and condescension. Some smirked openly, as if daring her to make a mistake. Others whispered behind their hands, their words sharp enough to sting if she let them. Clara had grown used to this, yet her stomach tightened each time someone scoffed or gave her a dismissive glance. She had learned to keep her head held high, to smile politely, and to focus on the work she loved rather than the cruelty of those around her. On this day, a larger event than usual was taking place. A town auction was scheduled for rare livestock and valuable goods, an opportunity that could change someone's fortune if they were clever and determined enough. Clara had heard about it for weeks. Every night she counted her small savings, hoping that she could participate in the auction. This was not just about winning a prize or acquiring a valuable item. It was about proving, first to herself and then to the town, that her hard work and patience were not in vain. As she arrived at the auction, Clara noticed the familiar faces of those who had always doubted her. A few influential townspeople lingered near the front, dressed in fine clothes and carrying themselves with a sense of superiority. Their eyes scanned the crowd with a sense of entitlement, as if the whole event belonged to them, and when they saw Clara, their reaction was predictably sharp. "Why is she even here?" One woman whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "Does she think she can compete with people who know how to play the game?" The laughter that followed was cruel but restrained, as if they didn't want to seem too obvious in their mockery. Clara felt a familiar pang of discomfort, but she pushed it aside. She reminded herself why she had come and focused on the task at hand. She would not allow their words to dictate her actions. The auctioneer began calling out the first items, and the crowd leaned in, eager for a chance to bid. Clara's heart beat faster with anticipation, knowing that her opportunity might come soon. Despite the pressure, Clara remained calm and composed. She had learned that fear and hesitation could ruin even the best-laid plans. Each item up for auction represented a possibility, a chance to invest, to grow, to secure a future that had always seemed just beyond her reach. She watched carefully as others raised their hands, placing bids with confidence, occasionally exchanging quick, competitive glances with one another. Clara noted the prices and the tactics, calculating quietly how much she could afford to bid without exhausting her limited savings. As the auction progressed, the murmurs and scoffs continued. Some townspeople whispered about Clara, doubting her ability to keep up or succeed. "She'll never have enough," one man said. "She doesn't know what she's doing." These words, though intended to belittle her, only fueled Clara's determination. She had faced skepticism her whole life, and each doubt had taught her patience and careful planning. She had learned to turn criticism into motivation, to use the disbelief of others as a quiet reminder that her effort mattered more than their approval. When the moment finally arrived, the item she had been eyeing was brought forward, a small but valuable piece of livestock that could provide both income and stability if managed well. Clara knew this was her chance. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from anticipation. She raised her hand to place a bid, and immediately a few of the town's more prominent figures reacted with surprise and, in some cases, derision. "She's serious," someone muttered, loud enough to draw a few laughs. Clara felt the sting of their amusement but did not lower her hand. She had saved carefully for this moment, yet she also knew that even with her savings, she might not win against wealthier bidders. It was a risk, and she had prepared herself for it. Her focus was not on proving the townspeople wrong, but on seizing an opportunity that could finally validate her effort and perseverance. The auctioneer looked at her, then at the other bidders, and called out the starting price. Clara whispered a quick calculation to herself and raised her hand confidently. The room's attention shifted immediately, and murmurs of disbelief rippled through the crowd. As the bidding war began, Clara noticed someone observing her quietly from the side, a man she had seen in town occasionally, a cowboy known for his calm demeanor and fair judgment. His presence was subtle but reassuring. He watched without judgment, as if silently acknowledging her courage and determination. Clara felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps someone outside the crowd's constant scrutiny could see her for who she truly was. The bidding intensified. Clara's heart raced with each counteroffer, and the scoffs from the sidelines grew louder. Some townspeople openly questioned her judgment, whispering about her lack of experience and hinting that she would fail spectacularly. Clara felt her determination solidify with each insult. She knew that winning this auction required more than money. It required courage, patience, and strategy. She reminded herself that her worth was not measured by their laughter, but by her ability to act wisely and decisively. Amid the tension, the quiet cowboy stepped forward and offered a small but meaningful gesture, a promise of support, without fanfare or announcement. He did not shout or challenge the others. He simply provided a discreet assurance that Clara was not alone in her effort. This quiet act gave Clara the confidence to continue bidding, knowing she had an ally who respected her determination. She raised her hand once more, doubling her bid carefully, and watched as the room reacted with surprise. The laughter faltered, replaced by curiosity and a hint of respect. The auctioneer called out the final rounds, and Clara felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement. Every bid she placed was a statement, not just of her financial readiness, but of her resolve to prove her capability. The townspeople who had mocked her began to whisper among themselves, noticing that she was not intimidated or deterred. Clara's quiet composure and strategic approach began to shift the room's energy subtly. She was no longer just a timid woman trying to participate. She was a determined individual taking control of her destiny. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the auctioneer's gavel came down. Clara had won. The room fell into a brief, stunned silence, followed by a mixture of surprise, admiration, and some remaining skepticism. She had done it, not with arrogance or loud displays, but through careful planning, patience, and unwavering courage. The small victory was more than just acquiring livestock. It was proof that her quiet strength and determination could overcome doubt and ridicule. As she collected her prize, Clara noticed the quiet cowboy standing nearby. He nodded at her with a small, encouraging smile. In that moment, she felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the support, but for the recognition that sometimes the most meaningful allies are those who act quietly, without seeking attention or reward. His presence had made a difference, reminding her that she did not have to face life's challenges alone. The day at the auction marked a turning point for Clara. She had stepped into a space where many had doubted her and emerged victorious, not through confrontation or anger but through strategy, courage, and quiet determination. The town's whispers began to change subtly. Some still doubted, but others began to see her differently. They noticed her patience, her careful planning, and her ability to act decisively under pressure. That evening, as Clara returned home with her prize, she reflected on the day's events. She realized that the challenge had been more than a financial test. It had been a test of character, resilience, and belief in herself. The ridicule of others, while painful, had not broken her. Instead, it had strengthened her resolve. She understood that the world might continue to scoff, but with determination, careful planning, and the support of trustworthy allies, she could create opportunities that would change her life. As night fell, Clara placed the livestock in a safe space and tended to it with care, feeling a quiet pride in what she had accomplished. She knew this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome, and more skeptics to face. But for the first time, she felt a sense of confidence that she could handle whatever came her way. The small victory at the auction was a reminder that patience, courage, and determination could lead to success, even in the face of doubt and mockery. And as Clara drifted to sleep that night, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging her quiet triumph. She had proven, at least to herself, that worth was not something handed out lightly or measured by the loud voices of judgment, but something earned through perseverance, skill, and the courage to take a chance. Clara had never met anyone quite like Eli, the quiet cowboy. He was a man of few words, but there was a calm strength about him that seemed to command respect without demanding it. She had seen him occasionally in town, usually helping someone with a difficult task or offering a hand where it was needed, but always without drawing attention. Today, as she stood in the aftermath of the auction, she noticed his gaze quietly following her, not with judgment or curiosity, but with a sense of understanding that she had rarely encountered. After the auction, Clara returned to her stall to organize her winnings, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Her hands were tired from the day's labor, and her heart was still racing from the intensity of the bidding. Yet there was a small, flickering spark of hope inside her, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to fully embrace before. She had won, against the odds, in front of people who had doubted her abilities for years. The town's laughter had faded into whispers of surprise, and though some still questioned her judgment, she felt a quiet sense of victory that went beyond the material prize. Eli approached her slowly, his boots making soft impressions in the dusty street. Clara looked up and felt a sense of relief mixed with curiosity. "You did well today," he said simply, his voice calm and steady. There was no condescension, no hidden criticism, only acknowledgement of her effort. Clara felt her shoulders relax slightly. After years of skepticism and ridicule, a few words of genuine recognition were more powerful than any applause she had ever imagined. I didn't think I could," Clara admitted quietly, unsure why she was suddenly so willing to speak to a stranger. "The town people, they don't take me seriously." Her voice trembled slightly as the weight of years of judgment seemed to press against her chest. Eli nodded knowingly, as if he understood every unspoken word and every quiet struggle she had endured. "People will always have opinions," Eli said, "but opinions don't determine your worth. Effort, patience, and honesty do. You proved that today." His words, though simple, carried a gravity that made Clara feel seen in a way she had not experienced before. She realized that for all the scoffing and laughter, there were people who recognized quiet strength, and Eli was one of them. For the first time, Clara felt comfortable sharing her dreams and fears with someone outside her family. She explained how she had saved for months, carefully managing her small earnings, and how much this auction meant to her, not just the livestock, but the chance to show that her hard work could pay off. Eli listened without interruption, nodding occasionally, never offering judgment or unsolicited advice. His presence was steadying, a reminder that not every challenge had to be faced alone. After a few minutes, Eli made an offer that took Clara by surprise. "I can help you with this," he said quietly. "I have some silver saved from years of honest work. If you need it, I can back you so that your efforts aren't limited by your savings." Clara blinked, momentarily stunned. She had never expected such a gesture. Most people in town would have judged her further or dismissed her ambitions entirely. Eli's offer was neither boastful nor condescending. It was simply a practical solution, a quiet way of saying, "I believe in your ability." Clara hesitated, not because she doubted his intentions, but because accepting help had always felt uncomfortable. She had been taught to rely on her own hands and her own work, and the thought of leaning on someone else, even with good intentions, felt foreign. But she also realized that courage was not just about standing alone. It was about recognizing when support could turn a challenge into an opportunity. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. "Thank you," she said softly, feeling a mix of gratitude and relief. Eli smiled faintly, the kind of smile that suggested he understood the weight of her decision. "We'll do this quietly," he said. "No need for anyone else to know. Let them underestimate you. It's their mistake, not yours." His words resonated with Clara. For years, the town's underestimation had been a burden, a constant reminder of her supposed limitations. Now, with Eli's quiet support, she felt empowered to move forward without seeking their approval. Together, they began to plan. Clara explained how she intended to care for the livestock, how she would invest her winnings to gradually improve her life, and what her long-term goals were. Eli listened carefully, offering only practical advice when necessary, never overshadowing her ideas. His approach was subtle but effective. Clara began to see her own abilities more clearly, realizing that the careful planning and patience she had cultivated for years were valuable assets, and that with the right support, her dreams could take shape. As the days passed, Clara and Eli developed an unspoken partnership. They worked side by side, assessing the livestock, planning her investment, and discussing ways to maximize her efforts. Eli never sought recognition, and Clara appreciated his quiet guidance. She noticed that his presence seemed to calm the doubts and fears that had haunted her for years. With him, failure felt less intimidating, and success seemed more achievable. Meanwhile, the town continued to watch. Some people whispered about her victory at the auction, questioning how she had managed it. But Clara no longer allowed their opinions to weigh heavily on her mind. She had learned that the scoffing voices of the town did not define her, and that quiet allies like Eli were far more important than the approval of those who had always doubted her. The experience at the auction had been transformative, and with Eli's support, she began to feel capable of achieving things she had once only dreamed of. The quiet cowboy also taught Clara an important lesson about trust and integrity. He showed her that strength was not always about loud declarations or grand gestures, but often about steady, consistent effort and the willingness to act when it mattered most. Watching him navigate challenges with calm determination, Clara realized that patience, combined with careful planning and support from trustworthy allies, could create opportunities that had seemed impossible before. One afternoon, as they worked together at her modest home, Eli spoke quietly about his own experiences. He told Clara how he had once faced ridicule and doubt in his youth, how people had underestimated him because he was quiet and unassuming. "I learned that the world often rewards noise over effort," he said. "But those who work steadily, who prepare carefully and act wisely, often achieve more than the loudest voices ever could." Clara listened intently, realizing that she was not alone in her struggle, and that even the quietest people could have immense impact if they believed in themselves and their abilities. Through their time together, Clara's confidence grew. She began to see opportunities where before she had only seen obstacles. She realized that her hard work had value, not just in material terms but in the strength and skill it had given her. Eli's quiet support reinforced the lesson that courage and determination, combined with trust in the right people, could overcome years of skepticism and doubt. By the end of this period, Clara had transformed not only her circumstances, but also her mindset. She no longer measured her worth by the laughter of others, nor did she fear their judgment. Instead, she focused on her goals, her careful planning, and the steady guidance of her quiet ally. She had begun to understand that real change required patience, courage, and the willingness to accept help when it was offered honestly. The turning point was approaching. Clara could feel it in her heart, a sense of anticipation and readiness. The auction had been just the beginning, a small victory that had opened the door to something greater. With Eli's support, she now had the tools, knowledge, and confidence to take bold steps toward her dreams. The next challenge would test her further, but she knew she was no longer facing it alone. In quiet moments, Clara reflected on her journey so far. She thought about the years of ridicule, the whispers of doubt, and the countless times she had felt invisible. And yet, she also thought about her patience, her careful planning, and the moments of small triumph that had built her resilience. Now, with Eli's guidance, She felt ready to step into a new chapter of her life, one where her efforts would finally be recognized, and her worth would no longer be questioned. As the sun set over the small town, casting long shadows over the dusty streets, Clara looked toward the future with a renewed sense of purpose. She understood that the journey ahead would not be easy, and that there would still be obstacles and doubters. But she had learned the most important lesson of all. Strength and success were not always loud or immediate, but often quiet, steady, and built with patience, courage, and the support of those who truly believed in her. And in the quiet presence of the cowboy who had offered her trust in silver, Clara finally felt a sense of hope that was stronger and more enduring than any she had known before. She realized that sometimes it was the quietest people who had the greatest impact, and the most profound support could come without fanfare or attention. With this understanding, she was ready to face whatever challenges awaited, confident that she had the strength, skill, and determination to succeed. The day of the final test had arrived. Clara felt a mixture of anticipation and nervous energy as she prepared to take the next step in her journey. The livestock she had won at the auction was ready, and her plans for using it wisely had been carefully mapped out. Every detail had been considered, from feeding schedules to possible sales strategies, from careful budgeting to potential investments. Yet, despite all her preparation, she could not deny that the town's whispers and skepticism still lingered in her mind. For years she had been underestimated and dismissed, and while she had grown stronger, the fear of failure was never entirely absent. Eli was there, as always, quiet and steady, observing her without judgment. He had helped her with every step of preparation, offering practical advice when necessary but never taking over. His support was subtle, yet it carried a strength that Clara relied upon more than she could admit. She noticed how the townspeople watched them, many still doubtful that Clara could succeed. Their curiosity was mingled with disbelief. Some had already begun to whisper about her previous auction victory, but few believed it would translate into lasting success. As Clara led her livestock to the town square where a small crowd had gathered, she felt every eye upon her. The murmurs began almost immediately. "Do you think she can manage it?" one person asked. "She got lucky last time, but luck won't last forever," another whispered. Clara kept her head high, focusing on the task rather than the judgment. She knew that success was not about proving others wrong. It was about acting wisely, with courage and preparation, and letting the results speak for themselves. The townspeople watched as she guided the animals, ensuring they were well fed and clean. Her care and attention were evident in every action. It was not just about ownership, it was about responsibility and skill. She demonstrated patience with the animals, soothing them when they became anxious and handling them with confidence and gentleness. Slowly, whispers began to shift from doubt to surprise. Some onlookers could not hide their admiration. The meticulous care Clara displayed spoke louder than words ever could. She had transformed what some had called a simple prize into a testament of her capability and dedication. Eli stood quietly nearby, holding a small bag of silver. At the moment when the highest stakes opportunity of the day arrived, a chance to sell some of her livestock to a visiting merchant, he stepped forward. Without any fanfare, he placed the silver down to back her transaction. There was no dramatic announcement, no drawing of attention to himself. Yet the act carried immense weight. The crowd fell silent, noticing for the first time that Clara was not alone. Someone had recognized her potential and was willing to support her in a meaningful way. The silence was palpable. The townspeople who had laughed and doubted her earlier felt the weight of the gesture. Some shifted uneasily, realizing that their mockery had been premature. Clara, for her part, kept her composure. She did not gloat, she did not flaunt the silver. Instead, she focused on the task at hand, conducting the transaction with the visiting merchant in the most efficient and professional way possible. Her attention to detail, combined with her calm confidence, impressed everyone who watched. The transaction went smoothly. Clara handled the silver carefully, counting and confirming each piece with precision. She exchanged the livestock for a fair price, demonstrating her growing knowledge and skill in matters the townspeople had assumed were beyond her. Each step was deliberate, steady, and competent, leaving little room for doubt. The merchant nodded in approval, commenting on her careful planning and organization. For the first time, the townspeople could see, in undeniable proof, that Clara's abilities were real and reliable. As the news of her successful transaction spread, the energy in the town square began to change. Whispers of doubt were replaced by murmurs of respect. People who had previously scoffed found themselves pausing, unsure of how to react. Some approached her cautiously, asking questions about how she had managed everything so efficiently. Others simply watched quietly, perhaps beginning to reconsider the assumptions they had long held about her. Clara felt a quiet satisfaction. She did not need their approval, but seeing their perception shift, so subtly and naturally, was rewarding. Eli remained at her side, observing the reactions without speaking. His calm presence reinforced her confidence. She realized, in that moment, that support need not be loud or showy to be effective. Quiet acts of faith and trust could have a far greater impact than any dramatic gesture. Eli's belief in her had allowed her to act decisively, to seize the opportunity with skill, and to demonstrate her worth in a way that no words or arguments could. The townspeople slowly began to approach Clara with respect instead of skepticism. "I didn't expect you to manage this so well," one man admitted, his tone hesitant. "You've clearly worked hard and know what you're doing," said another woman. Their voices, once sharp with mockery, were now tempered with acknowledgement. Clara responded with quiet gratitude, neither arrogance nor pride coloring her words. She had learned that true recognition came not from demanding it, but from demonstrating ability, patience, and integrity. Even those who had been the most vocal in their ridicule found themselves reevaluating their assumptions. They realized that Clara had not only succeeded in acquiring and managing the livestock, but had done so with skill, foresight, and dignity. The laughter that had once followed her was now replaced by respectful silence. Some townspeople even offered assistance, acknowledging that her efforts had earned their recognition. Clara accepted politely, knowing that collaboration was another form of growth, and that shared respect could strengthen her position further. Throughout the day, Clara continued to work with careful precision. She managed her new resources, organized her plans, and took every opportunity to learn from the experiences she encountered. Eli remained a quiet presence, offering guidance only when necessary, allowing her to lead. Together, they demonstrated that patience, strategy, and careful action could transform doubt into recognition. The town watched, learning an important lesson. Worth is often quiet, deliberate, and proven through consistent action rather than loud words. By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the town, Clara's success was undeniable. She had not only managed the livestock and completed the transaction, but had also shifted the perception of everyone who had doubted her. The quiet confidence she displayed, combined with her careful planning and Eli's discreet support, had created a moment of transformation. Those who had laughed were now silent, and those who had doubted were beginning to acknowledge her capability. In the evening, Clara reflected on the events of the day. She realized that the victory was not merely in the acquisition of resources, but in the proof of her own worth. The laughter of the town had once felt heavy on her heart, but now she understood that perseverance, preparation, and the support of trustworthy allies could turn ridicule into respect. She thought about Eli's quiet guidance and his discreet act of backing her with silver. His belief in her had been a turning point, demonstrating that sometimes the most powerful support comes without drama or recognition. Clara's transformation was not only in the eyes of the town, but also within herself. She had faced doubt, ridicule, and the weight of expectation, yet she had acted with courage, patience, and integrity. Her confidence had grown, as had her understanding of how to navigate challenges wisely. She knew that the road ahead would still hold obstacles, but she felt ready to face them with clarity and strength. As night fell and the town quieted, Clara tended to her livestock, checking each one carefully and ensuring their well-being. She felt a sense of pride that was calm yet profound. The journey had been difficult, and the scoffing voices of the past still lingered faintly in memory, but she had proven, both to herself and to others, that quiet determination, careful planning, and trust in the right allies could overcome doubt. Eli, standing nearby, gave a small nod of approval. Clara smiled softly, understanding that this partnership built on respect, trust, and quiet support had changed the course of her life. Together, they had turned a day of potential humiliation into a moment of undeniable triumph. The townspeople had witnessed something remarkable: the power of patience, strategy, and integrity in the face of ridicule. Clara understood that this moment would not erase the years of doubt entirely, nor would it eliminate all future challenges. But it had shown her, and the town, that strength could be quiet, success could be deliberate, and recognition could come through action rather than words. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to take the next steps in her journey with confidence, skill, and the knowledge that she was capable of much more than anyone had ever believed. The night air was cool as Clara and Eli walked home together, the sun casting a final glow on the streets of the town. There was no fanfare, no celebration, just quiet satisfaction and mutual respect. Clara had taken a significant step toward a life shaped by her own efforts and abilities, supported by those who genuinely believed in her. And in that quiet victory, she felt the most profound sense of accomplishment she had ever known. The days after Clara's remarkable success at the auction were filled with a mixture of hard work and quiet satisfaction. She had proven her ability to manage the livestock, conduct business with skill, and earn the respect of even the most skeptical townspeople. Yet for Clara, the true victory was not just in the recognition she had received. It was in the knowledge that her patience, determination, and careful planning had carried her through challenges that once seemed impossible. Every morning she woke before the sun, tending to her animals with the same care and diligence that had brought her this far. She checked each stall, prepared food, and ensured that everything ran smoothly, knowing that her consistency was what truly set her apart. The town, once quick to mock or dismiss her, began to view her differently. The laughter and whispers that had followed her for years were gradually replaced by curiosity, respect, and even admiration. People approached her for advice on managing animals, organizing small businesses, and planning projects with attention to detail. Some of the very individuals who had scoffed at her now found themselves seeking guidance. Clara responded with patience and humility, never flaunting her success or seeking to belittle anyone in return. She had learned that respect gained through integrity and competence was far more meaningful than recognition gained through confrontation or arrogance. Clara also began to understand the value of alliances built on trust and mutual respect. Eli, the quiet cowboy who had supported her with both guidance and discreet backing, remained a steady presence in her life. Though he rarely sought acknowledgement for his role, Clara knew that his support had been instrumental in her journey. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not only for the tangible help he had provided, but for the quiet confidence he had instilled in her. His belief in her abilities had allowed her to take risks she might otherwise have avoided, and it had shown her that true strength often comes from those who stand beside you without drawing attention to themselves. With her livestock thriving and her skills growing, Clara began to expand her ventures carefully. She reinvested her earnings, purchased additional animals, and experimented with small-scale trades that complemented her main work. Each step was calculated, each decision made with patience and foresight. She learned to anticipate challenges, manage resources wisely, and find opportunities where others saw only obstacles. Her success was not instantaneous or flashy, but it was steady and enduring, a reflection of the principles she had lived by for years. As Clara's influence in the town grew, she noticed a subtle shift in the community itself. People who had once dismissed her began to change their behavior, not out of fear, but out of respect. The town slowly became more inclusive, more attentive to the efforts of those who had previously been overlooked. Children observed her work ethic and learned from her example, seeing that quiet diligence and careful planning could achieve what seemed impossible. Even adults who had been skeptical began to reflect on their own assumptions, realizing that value often lies hidden beneath appearances and quiet demeanor. Despite her growing reputation, Clara remained humble. She understood that her journey was ongoing and that there would always be new challenges to face. She continued to rise before dawn, tending to her animals, planning new ventures, and seeking ways to improve both her life and the community around her. Her focus was no longer on proving herself to those who had doubted her. It was on maintaining her integrity, pursuing excellence, and using her skills to create meaningful results. This approach not only strengthened her success, but also inspired others to adopt similar principles in their own lives. Eli remained an unassuming yet vital part of her journey. His presence reminded Clara that meaningful support does not require recognition, and that the quiet guidance of someone who believes in you can be more powerful than the loudest applause. Together, they worked on projects that extended beyond personal gain, helping to improve the town and provide opportunities for others. Their collaboration was not about credit or status. It was about shared vision and practical action, reinforcing the idea that success and influence are best measured by the positive impact one has on others. As the seasons changed, Clara began to see the fruits of her labor not just in material gains, but in the lives she touched and the respect she had earned. Her animals flourished, her business ventures succeeded, and the town slowly adjusted its perception of her. People who had once whispered behind her back now greeted her with polite acknowledgement, and some even sought her advice. Clara never forgot the years of doubt and ridicule, but she no longer allowed them to weigh heavily on her. Instead, she used those experiences as a reminder of how perseverance, patience, and integrity could transform both her life and the perception of those around her. Over time, Clara also discovered a deeper sense of confidence in herself. She realized that her worth was never dependent on the approval of others, but on her ability to act with wisdom, courage, and care. The lessons she had learned through years of struggle, the importance of patience, the value of quiet allies, and the power of careful planning, had become a foundation upon which she could build her future. She began to dream even more boldly, setting goals that once seemed unattainable and pursuing them with a clear mind and steady determination. The town had become a place of opportunity and growth for Clara, yet she remained grounded in the values that had carried her this far. She did not seek to dominate or overshadow others. Instead, she led by example, showing that diligence, patience, and integrity could achieve remarkable results. People gradually learned to appreciate her for who she truly was, a capable, resilient, and thoughtful individual who had earned respect through consistent effort and quiet courage. One evening, as Clara tended to her animals and reflected on the journey that had brought her here, she thought about the auction, the laughter of the townspeople, and the quiet support of Eli. She realized that each challenge she had faced had prepared her for this moment. The ridicule she had endured had taught her resilience. The small victories had built her confidence, and the guidance of a trustworthy ally had helped her navigate a path that might have seemed impossible alone. In that reflection, Clara felt a profound sense of fulfillment, not just in her accomplishments, but in the growth she had experienced as a person. The quiet cowboy, Eli, remained by her side, sharing in her successes without demanding recognition. His steady presence reinforced the lessons Clara had learned. That meaningful support does not need fanfare, that true courage is often quiet, and that success built on patience, planning, and integrity is enduring. Together, they continued to work on ventures that benefited not only themselves, but the town as a whole, demonstrating that lasting impact comes from collaboration, wisdom, and thoughtful action. As months turned into years, Clara's life transformed in ways she had once only dreamed of. She expanded her business ventures, provided opportunities for others in the town, and became a respected figure whose advice and guidance were sought by many. The ridicule of the past had faded into distant memory, replaced by a quiet acknowledgement of her abilities and character. Children and young adults looked up to her, learning that perseverance, diligence, and the courage to act wisely could overcome skepticism and doubt. Clara understood that the journey was never truly over. New challenges would always arise, but she faced them with a sense of confidence and self-assurance she had never known before. She no longer measured her worth by the laughter or opinions of others, but by the quality of her efforts, the integrity of her actions, and the positive impact she could have on the world around her. This perspective allowed her to approach life with a sense of calm determination, knowing that success was a product of consistent effort, patience, and thoughtful planning. Eli's quiet support continued to remind her that meaningful relationships are built on trust, mutual respect, and shared values. He never sought recognition for his role in her journey, yet his guidance had been instrumental in helping Clara achieve her goals. Through their partnership, Clara had learned that success is rarely achieved alone, and that the quiet, steadfast presence of a loyal ally can make all the difference in the world. In the end, Clara's story became an inspiration to the entire town. The woman who had once been dismissed and underestimated was now a symbol of perseverance, skill, and integrity. Her journey demonstrated that patience, careful planning, and quiet determination could overcome even the harshest doubt and mockery. She showed that true worth is revealed through consistent effort and thoughtful action, and that recognition earned through integrity is far more meaningful than approval sought through loud words or superficial appearances. Clara often reflected on how far she had come, from a quiet, overlooked young woman to a respected and influential figure in her town. She had faced ridicule, doubt, and countless challenges, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable. Her journey had taught her the value of perseverance, the importance of trustworthy allies, and the power of acting with integrity and patience. And in that reflection, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had not only changed her own life, but had also left a lasting impact on the world around her. As the sun set over the town, casting a warm golden glow over the streets and the market, Clara stood quietly, surveying the life she had built. Her livestock thrived, her ventures prospered, and the respect she had earned was genuine and lasting. The laughter and ridicule of the past were now distant echoes, replaced by admiration, trust, and a sense of community. She had learned that true success is measured not by wealth or fame, but by the strength of character, the quality of effort, and the positive influence one has on others. And in the quiet, steady presence of Eli, Clara understood that some of the most profound support comes without fanfare, that courage is often quiet, and that recognition and respect are earned through perseverance, patience, and integrity. Together, they had turned doubt into triumph, ridicule into respect, and a simple opportunity into a life-changing journey. And in that journey, Clara had discovered not only her worth, but the remarkable power of quiet determination, careful planning, and steadfast belief in herself.